You guys might remember a couple of months back, I reviewed a really interesting concept for a portable monitor. This thing is from UPERFECT, and it's not just a portable monitor. It is a dual portable monitor. This is literally two screens connected by a hinge. You can connect it to your laptop, whatever it might be, and actually driven off of a single USB-C port. It's powered and driven. You now have a triple monitor setup. This thing is really, really cool, really solid build quality, but along with that, a pretty high price tag, $629 regular price, and then of course on sale here for $449. Today we're looking at a different product. This is from a company called Frunsi or Frunsi. I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced, but it is effectively the same sort of thing, but instead of being $450, it's $370. And of course, this thing might not always be on sale for $449, so it could be a whole heck of a lot cheaper. It's 1080p, 15.6 inches, and I hope it's going to be a cheaper way to get into this sort of setup because it's a really, really cool idea to me. This thing is basically the size of a laptop, so you could probably fit your actual laptop and this into a bag together, and wherever you are, you could open up your laptop, plug this thing in, and you have one heck of a productivity multitasking setup wherever you go. So with that being said, let's dig into this thing and see if it actually stands up to the UPERFECT model. So let's unbox this thing. The first thing I want to point out to you is that the box that it came in is about as non-descriptive as a box could possibly be. There is literally nothing on any of this box. Maybe they're saving some money that way. Hopefully that gets passed down to the consumer. Inside the box, we have a couple of things here. Folding display, just sort of a quick guide for how to use this thing. We may reference this a bit later. Already infiltrated by Australian Shepherd hares. Here is the device itself. It did have a plastic wrap on it, which I've already taken off. There's the logo. I think overall, it's pretty decent looking. On the back side, you can see how there's sort of this area that protrudes a little bit. There's a spot for a mount if you want to go that route. And then, of course, there is a kickstand. We'll look at the device a bit more closely here in just a moment. Beyond that, we have a USB-C to C cable, which can do video out. We have another USB-C to C cable, which it says is for power delivery only. We have a USB-A to C, which I'm not exactly sure what that would be useful for. We'll maybe look into that a little bit later. And then we have an HDMI cable. This is probably mini HDMI to HDMI. And then we have a power cable, or a power brick rather, and it is USB-C to C. So that's not what that A to C cable is actually for either. Looking at the device a bit more closely, I think that the build quality is okay. It doesn't feel quite as good as the one from UPERFECT. There is a little bit of creak there. Maybe you can see that, probably not. One thing that I don't absolutely love is the fact that your I/O is actually covered up by the kickstand, which has a hinge here. Looks like probably a menu button and then maybe like a volume button down there. On the other side, we have two USB-C ports and then that mini HDMI. But as you can see, this little kickstand does move all the way up to, man, I guess all the way flat the other direction. It is fully articulatable. And what you can do, set this thing down and then open it up, and you have these two relatively large monitors now to work with. So I've got my Surface Pro 7 here, and we're gonna plug this in. For the first time, you'll see it here live on camera. We'll see what happens. Now, I believe it's supposed to pop up and ask me to install a driver on this Windows device. We'll see if that actually happens. So far, what we have is two monitors, but we have USB display, so it's a removable drive. It's popping up like a removable drive. Let's go ahead and open that up. And what we have here is an application that I think is going to install that driver. Now with the UPERFECT model, we did not need to do this. It just kind of worked out of the box. I guess Windows was able to grab the driver itself. This is a little bit of an extra step, but we'll do it and see what happens. So the installation process, very, very simple. Just hitting next a bunch of times basically. And we are completed. Let's see what's about to happen. Are we about to have both monitors on the right side working? Looks like I need to reboot, so we will do that really quickly and see what happens. All right, I was actually sitting here going through the controls on the monitor because I was thinking that it was not working when something happened after the reboot, and now both monitors are working. Let's identify them, and what we can do now is we can put 2 down here and 3 up here. I guess I need to apply that, don't I? Duh. All right, so if my cursor comes off of this screen, it'll appear on this screen now, and if I go up above, it'll go up onto that screen. So we are now working, I think, pretty well. So this is sort of a scenario that I could imagine, right? So I've got my feed over here, which shows me, different news articles that I might need to be keeping up with for content on the channel. Threads up here where I may see some other work-related things going on. And then down here, I've got some tunes or something like that playing. That is kind of the idea here. And you can have all this stuff folded up and stuck into a bag. Now, one other thing I want to mention is that, as you can see up here on this top screen, it's really kind of laggy. Like the frame rate occasionally is just kind of lower than it is down here. This looks so much smoother than this does. In fact, look at my cursor moving around. Let's go to the exact same page and I'll show you the scrolling, how different it looks on the top monitor versus the bottom monitor. And I ran into this exact same thing. Look how bad that looks and look how much better that looks. It's kind of odd, but like I was going to say, I ran into the exact same thing with that other dual monitor setup. But with that other monitor, it was only happening in Chrome OS. Now, what I think is happening here is I think that part of that driver, there's some sort of a software solution whereby we are getting a display to that top monitor, or we're getting a picture to that top monitor or top display. You're not plugging anything into that top monitor. You're plugging it into the bottom monitor, and it's doing something to generate essentially that second screen to get the picture to it. So perhaps my Surface Pro 7, being an older i5, doesn't quite have enough power to do that in a way that is kind of keeping up, basically, because the bottom monitor looks perfect. The top one, if nothing much is going on, it looks relatively smooth. But as soon as you start kind of taxing the system at all, it starts to bog down. So that may be something that's dependent upon your device. You may be, if you have kind of a slower device, you may be stuck with whatever's on the top monitor being something somewhat stationary. Now, something else that I immediately wanted to try was actually running 2 different devices into this thing. So bottom display would be one device, top display would be the other device. This is something that I think will be quite useful. It can fold all the way back over into this tent orientation. This makes sense to me, and this is something you can do on that UPERFECT monitor. However, when I tried this, having 2 devices plugged in both over USB-C, things just did not work. Very strange things were happening, and it just does not function. I can do this exact same thing with that Delta monitor. Here, not going to work. So then the next thing I tried was actually plugging in one with USB-C and the other with HDMI, and as far as I can tell, that does not seem to work either. You can only ever have one monitor on, and you can switch between sources, but I couldn't find a way to have one thing on one and the other on the other. In terms of just quality itself, I do think that these screens do look pretty decent. They're not the best looking things I've ever seen, but I think that they do a pretty decent job here. And one of my favorite things about them is the fact that they kind of have like an anti-glare thing going on. If I turn this lamp on, you can kind of see what I mean. You can see obviously the lamp here kind of hitting the screen, but it's not rendering most of the screen unwatchable. In fact, if I kind of just sit back a little bit, it's pretty much totally fine. Even with a bright light right there on it, you're getting a pretty decent looking picture. Now, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the speaker leaves quite a bit to be desired. I think you're probably going to be better served using the speaker in either your laptop or whatever it might be versus these speakers here. But again, I think that the picture quality is pretty good. So let's take a look at the controls that you have really quickly. So you do have control over your picture and then your color settings, which basically you can change the color temperature. By default, it appears like it is set to warm. You can see you can change that to cool, and I don't really think that honestly made a huge difference to what this thing looked like. Actually, it did make a decent difference. Let's back this up a little bit and I'll let you actually see what we're changing here. So warm to cool. You can probably see that a little bit. Under audio settings, you can just mute. You can also change the volume. Other settings, not a whole lot going on there either. And then you can change your input source. Not nearly as many settings or controls as I've seen on some other monitors. This is one of those things where you're going to have to decide for yourself which way to go, because yes, you can save some money, but you also do lose functionality. You apparently lose the ability to have different devices on different screens. That may be totally superfluous. You have no use for that at all, in which case, hey, doesn't matter. You're just saving money. Still, this thing is $369, but that's almost $100 cheaper. So again, if you don't use that feature, it doesn't really matter. A couple of other things I didn't mention earlier. You don't have like independent control of each monitor. You can't go in and change settings per monitor. You can't rotate one monitor and then bend it over into that tint mode. There's just little things like the little fit and finish things that you're going to miss out on compared to some more expensive designs. But again, it is cheaper. So guys, big thanks to Frunsi for sending this monitor over for me to review. Like with all my reviews, no money has changed hands for the production of this video, and they are seeing my review at the exact same time as you are. If you want to make a purchase, there is an affiliate link in the description down below. I will also place a full review link to that UPERFECT monitor as well, in case you really want to see more of the differences between those two to decide which way you might want to go. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.